replicating the human eye's perception of field of view roughly requires that the focal length
Damn it! You're gonna ask me to repeat it, aren't you? I'm stealing it. You're gonna ask me to repeat it, aren't you? Just right now, right this minute. I'm not sure I can, to be honest.
Next episode. No, because I haven't done that yet. I haven't done that punishment yet. It doesn't have. It hasn't been worn down.
No.
So I finished up those exercises that we were talking about, the ones with the elaborate punishments. I was thinking we could just spend today reviewing them and what I've generally gotten from them. Let's get to the deadlines I was set last week, which were a few.
Okay, all right.
Now, we made some conditions. I can't remember which one was for which, but one of them I had to Photoshop my face onto a Vampire Diaries poster, and one of them I had to make a film bro me about myself.
Mm-hmm.
One of them obviously isn't done because it was due 2 weeks from last recording. And that's just taking notes on all the you didn't know episodes already, which is going swimmingly. The other one, I've made a new abstract composition board. Just hang on a moment. I'm going to grab it.
Yeah.
So the difference here is that it is a flat plane, a 4 paper, 3 strips, a piece of black card.
Yep.
And the shapes aren't very even, but they're also flat.
So are we calling this the composition board version 2.0 then?
Yep. Mm-hmm. And it's the current version. It's the current model. So if anyone wants to replicate it, that's the current model.
Okay.
Second on the agenda, which has been very, very lucrative, I think, mentally, was the see-through glass or seeing glass?
See-in.
I'll have to change it on my development journal then.
As in think in XYZ language.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Wait on.
Oh, God. So the camera didn't want you to make whatever pun you were going to make just then. It didn't approve. My second task was seeing glass for 5 days straight. Now, there's a minor infraction here. I did not do it for 5 days straight. I did not do it on my birthday.
Oh, so viewers, this?
No, because I did it twice the day after.
I think we are going to have to refer this to the audience, I think.
Okay, I'm pretty sure the punishment for this one was the... you don't have to do this. I'm just going to plead my case and just say, I think it's fine. But if it isn't, whatever. I'll set fire to a possession of mine or something. It was great. Literally, it is such a quick exercise. It takes no time, but it is wonderful. I literally feel how helpful it is. It's an immediate feedback one, especially when you do it daily. I'm going to do it after this. I'm going to try and do it every single day. I've got a repeating reminder on my to-do list.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. It's excellent. If you have a look at my development journal, I've got a couple where I get the exact focal length correct. And I just look I'm like, yes, excellent. That's the point. Wonderful. I think in the middle range of focal lengths, so 24 to 85 maybe, or 35 to 80 or thereabouts, that's where I work the best. And then the second it goes into wide angle or telephoto, I register it as just that. So it's a lot harder for me to actually tell what the exact length is. I'm better at it with wide angle because I've used it more than I am for telephoto. I've got a lot of moments where I thought it was 14 mil, but it was actually an 18 mil, or I thought it was an 18 mil, but it was actually a 16 mil, that kind of thing. You may notice that I have only done focal length for those exercises. I think once I've built up that confidence with focal length, I'll start moving on to aperture and even ISO, that kind of thing.
Personally, I think this exercise is really only about optics in space.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think ISO, guessing ISO from a finished image, in my opinion, is
redundant,
overly academic. I don't see any practical, because there are just so many other factors involved. Sorry, sidetrack warning. Trying to guess ISO from a finished image is a misunderstanding of the ISO concept. It's a misappropriation of it. It is, in my opinion, ISO is one of the greatest myths in imaging technology.
On account of the fact that it's just gain.
Ever.
I've heard you talk about it before.
What
are we talking about?
Okay. So what I think you can, and longer term, hopefully will take out of the see in glass exercise.
Oh my God, we were talking about that.
So the benefit I do see from this is being better able to predict what a certain focal length on a given sensor size, what kind of field of view that is going to give you. Longer term,
does 500px provide? It provides camera models, so I could hypothetically also try and guess sensor size.
Yes, indeed, and I think that is actually quite important.
That's a whole new ballpark.
Because then you have to deal with the crap factor, also known as the crop factor.
Yeah, a poo-poo factor.
Longer term, also adding in aperture. And I think for me, really kind of interesting with that is when you put all of those together, i.e. focal length, sensor size, and aperture, you get a rendering of space. In terms of my own preferences in lensing, I have a certain combination of focal length, shot size, and depth of field. And aperture. That gives me what I kind of consider a cinematic volume.
Your cinematic volume, yeah.
Like a depth and feeling and sense of the space behind the screen that appeals to me.
Yeah.
And the way I got to that was pretty much the see in glass game.
Yeah, and I can already feel it sort of
say like, oh, I like that space.
Taking effect on me.
And then go like, okay, so that's a 135 at f2.8 at like for a very wide shot. So when I translate that into super 35, it gives some. Okay, all right, I'll try that. And go, oh, I like that space. I like the kind of sense of depth and distance behind the screen playing, and go like, okay, so that's APS-C like 35 f2. Okay, all right.
I've noticed. So if I were to talk about the stuff that I actually liked in like the things that I've stopped and been like, I like the way this looks. It's still, I was thinking that as I sort of matured in my understanding of focal length, I'd shake off the shorter focal length obsession that I kind of had, where I was like, this distorts stuff and makes it look wacky and nice. But then the more that I think about it, in terms of rendering space, like rooms and landscapes and all these things, it is still far and away my favorite, at least my favorite focal length. Like a high aperture, short focal length landscape photo is like I love that shit. I eat it up. I love the sense of scale that it provides to the entire world around it. The whole place could look super. You'd walk around in it could be like a barren plain that would look really boring. But because the thing that's close to me looks so big, and because the things that are so far away look so tiny, but everything has such an incredible sense of detail and like tangibility, it's simultaneously really like heightened in a way that I really like, but also very, very like grandiose. And I don't know. I've noticed that I actually haven't shaken off the preference for shorter focal length, even as I've moved away from what they do to the face and what they do to subjects, and more to what they do to space.
Two things I want to throw in there. One, I think it's good that you are kind of keeping track of the trends of what you do and don't like, rather than kind of going, everyone says, or big hero practitioner says X, Y, Z, that you are kind of like relying on your own taste in this.
Trying to, I'm sure maybe there's something influencing me. I don't know.
Flipping the script, though, I will say, what are we talking? 5 days, depending on how exactly we count.
Hasn't been very long. 5 days.
And secondly, screen size, viewing size, I think may play a big factor in this.
That's a good point.
You keep that in mind as well.
I could.
So part of my choice in kind of like what I think of as my cinematic volume the viewing size really matters. And I think there are two factors that come with that I'd like to see you explore for your own sake, but I'm also curious to get input from other people. So this next part is going to get a little bit technical.
But we've been technical. It's fine.
Do you remember what a normal lens is as opposed to a wide angle or a telephoto lens?
Yes, I do. Because I watched the episode about this yesterday, and I'm about to get it wrong now that I've built myself up. It's a lens. No, wait. I'm second guessing myself now. Because that's dumb. Why would that do anything? Okay. I'm going to start off with this. You mentioned that for a 35mm sensor, hang on. Unless, of course, we discussed normal lenses relative to like sensor size or something, because I know that we talked about this. It's in my notes. Hang on. Let me just get my notes open. Here's what I have written down. And if this is wrong, please tell me immediately, because it's in black and white directly in front of me, transcribed from our focal length episode. A normal lens, something, the image diagonal of a lens matches the sensor size in use. Some normal lenses are only approximations of this rule due to the increased magnification offered by cinema. So a normal lens for a Super 35 sensor is 50mm, and a normal lens for APS-C is 35mm. How wrong am I?
Depends on how we aggregate the concatenated errors. Did that make any sense?
The concatenated part was where you lost me.
When you build an argument, one of the traps we often fall in is that if we make one little mistake and then we build our next argument on top of that with another little mistake, and then we build our argument next step after that with another little mistake.
Yeah.
It's like a cascading from start to end, and you've actually ended up somewhere quite far away from where you wanted to be, and that's concatenation.
Okay, so I've learned that, and hopefully I won't get it wrong next time you ask me what concatenation means. But
when it comes to certain concepts within this, precision is important, because if you get an added amount of error on every step you go along, then eventually that will build on the previous error, will build on the previous error, will build on the previous error, and you'll be drifting further away from something that is usable. And by that, I mean something that allows you to predict outcomes from certain circumstances.
So how about, to protect myself from this error, concatenating, you give me your definition and I replace whatever I had written.
A normal lens is a lens that is considered to render perspective similar to human vision.
How was I that wrong?
Because you skipped this stage and went to the next one.
I see.
When we talk about perspective, what we are really talking about in these terms is the relative size versus distance of objects. So in other words, human vision, we perceive two objects if they are identical objects and one appears larger than the other, we perceive the larger object as being closer. There is a certain relationship between how much the objects appear to reduce in size relative to the distance.
I'm following.
For example, the distortion that a lot of people talk about with wide angle lenses is an exaggerated fall off in size with distance. As we move away, the object gets smaller much quicker than it does when we look at it with the unaided human vision, as in through no lens.
There is indeed. Hang on. It's either foreshortening or the other thing. Hang on, before I nail it down, I'm going to quickly here you go. Perspective and, foreshortening, I think, refers to the non-linear growth of relative size of very close objects. I've got written down here that diminution is just the reducing size of objects in the distance.
To be honest, I'm not entirely 100% sure about the difference in those two terms myself.
Empowering.
I've come across it in arts, painters, drawers, whatever. My impression from that is that it does seem to be used a little bit interchangeably. So, to be honest,
so cool.
Not 100% sure.
This is what happens when you get a bunch of creative types together to make a bunch of definitions. It's like the film jargon world. It's all meaningless.
On the opposite end, with longer focal lengths, telephoto lenses, objects don't appear to reduce as much in size with distance as we would expect with just the human eye.
Right.
Hence, we get the compression. So let's say we got object A at that distance and we got object B at that distance. So you can see on camera how this hand is smaller than this hand.
Yeah.
Right?
But in a longer lens, it would appear
telephoto lens would render this hand bigger at the same distance.
Yeah.
And because it appears bigger, it appears closer. Hence, we get the so-called compression of
the
distance.
Whole space.
Yes.
Yeah. That's good because I was never able to put this into words. That's very nice. But I've always literally, here's a flat plane. So turn on its side. A long focal length does this, presses everything together, whereas a shorter focal length does the opposite and pulls things apart in terms of distance. And I've thought about that, but I've never been able to put it into words, which is, I'm glad that we've just spoken about that. That's nice.
Yeah, no, I was the same for a long while until I started teaching formally when you actually have to explain.
I think that's why, as I said, literally just like about 10 minutes ago, people go, wider lenses have a greater sense of scale, because they literally do. They make things look, by making things look smaller, they make the space appear larger. If that makes any sense?
Yes and no.
I could be very wrong.
Part of that is personal aesthetic, as in,
True.
which is the better color, blue or red. It's like you're never going to get any agreement on that, are you?
No.
But the other part is to do with viewing size. So just bear in mind, we are talking about the rendering, particularly the rendering of depth and distance within the image is affected by focal length. And more so, what it really is about is object distance. So we also got to take into account shot size.
Right.
So in terms of the rendering of depth and distance, there are three factors, which are field of view, object distance, i.e. shot size, and depth of field. Keep those in mind. So the relationship between focal length and sensor size is what determines field of view. So the field of view that most closely resembles human relative size perception is roughly focal length equal to diagonal of the sensor. So you were right in that part.
Let me write that down. Okay. I see. So, yeah, I scrolled all the way up the whole thing. Sorry, go on. I can multitask, I think.
And this is where you were correct. These relationships are, to a certain extent, approximate. So, for example,
but also aren't, apparently.
A still's full frame sensor should be 24 millimeters by 36 millimeters, which gives us a diagonal of the sensor of roughly 43 millimeters.
Hang on, I'm actually not multitasking very well at all right now. Hang on. Bear with me. I was wrong. Yeah. Replicating the human eye's perception of field of view roughly requires that the focal length yeah.
Replicating the human perception's perspective, not field of view.
Right.
Two different things.
Did you say perspective earlier?
I did say perspective. Yes.
Fuck,
I did.
Jesus.
I did say that a camera's field of view is dependent on the ratio between focal length and sensor size.
Right. Okay. I think I've got it now. That's good. Thank you.
These are the little things that are going to concatenate if we don't catch them early.
Yeah.
And it's easy to do. So when I say perspective, the aspect of human visual perception that we are dealing with is really the relative size. Theoretically, to match human vision's perspective, we want to use a lens with a focal length equal to the diagonal of the camera sensor.
Done. All right. That's written down. It's not going to concatenate.
At least not yet.
Not yet. Not until science proves us wrong.
Right. So this is where the lazy photographer principle comes into effect. We approximate. We're not dealing with like decimal places precision here. So as an example, a full frame sensor at 24 millimeters by 36 millimeters in size gives us a diagonal of roughly 43 millimeters. So 1 millimeter more than the answer to everything. So rather than saying that the normal lens for a full frame sensor is 43 millimeters, we've made it 50 millimeters, close enough for our purposes.
Sweet.
So to carry on that example, a micro 4/3 sensor diagonal is roughly 22 millimeters.
Yep.
Which is almost exactly half of the diagonal of the full frame sensor.
So it is.
Which in theory should give us a 22 point something normal lens for micro 4/3. But again, much easier to just
24.
say 25.
25, never mind.
So it goes exactly half of the full frame.
Right, yeah.
A Super 35 sensor should in theory be 24 millimeters by 18 millimeters. So 24 multiplied by 1/8 millimeters, which gives us a diagonal somewhere in the region of 27 point something millimeters.
27 point something?
Yeah, decimal points, whatever. Now, this is where things go off the rails and onto a different track altogether.
Oh, dear.
So the two examples we listed previously, full frame and micro 4/3, were primarily originated and designed for stills photography. So the importance of the stills photography in this context is that majority of consumption of stills images is at relatively close distances.
Right.
Majority of stills images, we are talking about arm's length at a maximum in terms of the space and distance in which you're physically consuming and engaging with your images, right? Now, of course, you've got the occasional exception, like billboard posters, etc., etc., etc. But as a proportion of the amount of still images you consume, those are rare exceptions.
Whereas a movie video is technically designed to be watched on either a big TV or literally a cinema screen at like a distance.
Yes, correct. Imagine the relative size differences, not uncommonly, and we're talking cinema here, we're not necessarily talking TV.
Yeah.
What's the probability of you sitting as close to the cinema screen as your arm's length?
Pretty much zero.
Are you likely to be talking 2 or 3 body lengths between yourself and the physical screen you're looking at?
3 body lengths, maybe?
And that'd be a fairly small theater. Like we're not talking
not unreasonable, yeah.
To maintain the same relative sizes, you effectively have to zoom in, don't you?
Yeah.
For that distance. And in terms of optics, what is zooming in? It is a longer focal length. Hence, it was decided that the normal lens for a cinema projection in general is going to be double the diagonal rather than 1 times the diagonal.
Gee, so 50?
Correct.
Huh. So I really was just like a little bit kind of right, but also wrong enough for it to be bad.
Hence concatenation of minor errors.
Yeah.
Which when you add them up, was giving you a drift. This has led me to explore and investigate, for larger viewing sizes, do I need longer focal lengths?
Because viewing size isn't really in my brain as often as it should be. So what conclusions, because your aesthetic is all about cinematic volume and watching it on a large screen. So has that led to you using longer focal length?
I would very much prefer not to bias your take on it. I'd be very curious to see you find your own kind of uncolored, unbiased, like said that it is truly your own. There are 2 ways we can deal with this. And part of the reason why I've drifted towards like the bigger there were certain viewfinders on film cameras that had a particular magnification of the image that just looking through the viewfinder, didn't matter what I was looking at, just made it feel like I was sitting watching a VMAX gargantuan cinema screen.
Oh, wow.
Now that I look at it, this goes right back to my very childhood, because what it reminded me of in terms of the scope and size and depth and distance was Viewmaster.
I feel like we spoke about this in our focal length. That's the thing. That's the, the
yeah,
and it like circles around.
Some people get put off by this. I don't have a cinema at home.
Just buy one, guys.
So how am I going to explore this? I think you've got two options that you can explore. VR goggles are made to kind of create that wraparound 180-degree.
Yeah, and there are cheaper options that you can attach your phone to.
Yeah.
Keep in mind. Yeah.
And the other one is there are camera viewfinders that are made like just a magnifier that you can Velcro onto the back of the camera screen.
Oh.
For some people, there may be a decision that I am more likely to have my audiences consume my work on a smaller screen, i.e. handheld in front of me, be that phone or tablet or whatever. I am going to design my aesthetic around that. Or, I really like that big screen aesthetic, so I'm going to design it around that. And I think part of what makes a cinematic image is that kind of being designed for the big screen. It trickles down when you do view it on a smaller screen, I feel.
It kind of like the cinematic style sort of retains its intent and effect.
No.
After, or you mean it worsens?
No, it does not have the same impact on a smaller screen. I think in some ways it can read much less compelling on a smaller screen. But what I do think it retains is that it is designed for a bigger screen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But
like its purpose is still there.
Yeah. And I think that's something that you see by association. I feel that audiences are going to associate it with other works through the pantheon of cinema that also have been designed for that same.
Okay,
purpose.
gotcha.
Does that make sense? So that you kind of retain a certain aesthetic by association, even when it does get scaled down.
Okay, I understand you now. I took me a while.
I just wasn't very good at explaining it, that's all. I know that on the one hand, as a beginner and kind of entry-level intermediate, if that makes sense, kind of upper-level beginner and entry-level intermediate, if that makes sense.
That's a very good way of describing it. Thank you.
I understand that it can be frustrating not to be given a clear do this, do that, this is better than that. In situation A, here's how you convey emotion B.
Yeah.
But I really do feel that, unfortunately, there isn't necessarily a universal truth in this in terms of that perception of size and scope. Everyone perceives it a bit differently. And I really want practitioners at your level of their own filmmaking creative journey to get to their own choices sooner. And I think for me also it kind of comes back a little bit to that whole issue of lizard brain, to trust your own aesthetics sooner.
Yeah.
To take a chance that, well, I'm going against Roger Deakins here. This can't be good. I'm going against Darius Khondji here. This can't be good.
Whereas it should just be, I'm going against what's his face.
Yeah,
let's see what happens.
Sir Roger, you do Sir Roger. Ethan, you do Ethan. Kim does Kim, and it's all good. I think for me, that's been my journey to my own style, which I still can't put down in words very well, but I know it when I see it.
I think you got enough. It makes for a good YouTube retrospective essay. Like I'm picturing the title right now: a still from something you've made the YouTube channel is called like Epic Cinematography, and it's called.
When I kind of found my style was when I actually stopped looking for my style. The moment when I was able to stop worrying about it and actually go with my own vision was when I was under the pump. You know, like when you're on your third consecutive 18-hour day and you're running 3 hours behind schedule again, and you've already on your 10th shot list and you just have to get a shot. That's when you do what you see. You stop worrying. You don't have time to go, what will Darius Ganji do? What would Janusz Kaminski go? What would Sir Richard Deakins do? It's just, I'm just going to go, okay, that kind of looks, I can work with that and just go.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, like for me personally, it was frustrating. It's just like kind of like drifting from where I thought I wanted to be visually. But that's when I started getting feedback. Other people would get, dude, I love your style. I'm like, okay. I know, try for style. It's just trying to get shit done. We could bring this back to I think it was the Thinking Cinematography episode, where we're going, a lot of practitioners
I think it was.
Can't actually define their own style because it's how they see. How do you see?
With my eyes. That's what they say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But throughout this, particularly having to try to verbalize it, comparing it to other practitioners, kind of do realize that, oh, okay, there are other ways of seeing. The longer term benefit, hopefully, of a lot of our minute stakes.
Glad you're using the term. I'm delighted.
Is that hopefully we are going to start seeing trends in what you like.
Which is why I do the composition one more as well. I've been putting it off because I'm just kind of like just a little bit. Like, what am I doing? I'm doing it, but I need to just keep doing it to see what happens, because then we'll get the same for composition as well. I'll have a mood board of how I see certain situations or emotions. Anyway, go on.
The next ones I probably want to put out there is, where are we at in terms of acquiring a lux meter?
I could order it today.
For that, I think there are 2 exercises I see with that. One is lighting to a stop, and the second one is a ratio or fill level.
Yeah, which I will be especially able to do by a nice LED cob light, which would be very, very fun.
Yeah, I'd challenge you to go a little bit more old school. And there are 2 exposure or brightness controls that I think are underrated.
Okay.
One is gels or nets for exposure control. If you can get yourself a gel swatch book, so that's it there.
That's great.
So you can use
like a great little fiddly item.
Where are we? Andes. Anyway, that's close enough. That's not an ND, that's platinum. Anyway. So can you see that's big enough?
Yeah, to cover like a torch or something. Yeah.
So they come in half stop, full stop, 2 stops, 3 stops, 4 stops, maybe even. Can't remember how many of the NDs are actually in the swatch book, but in any case, that's one way. The other way that's very, very underrated, which I think is very handy to have up your arsenal, is distance. And
to alter exposure. Yes.
And particularly the inverse square law.
Is the inverse square law something that we can tear into in a minute and 30 seconds?
Probably not. So are we going to leave the viewers on a cliffhanger? Are we coming back to
this? That's a great idea. As long as we fulfill it and bring up the inverse square law on the next episode, though, which we have to do.
I think it is quite an underrated skill.
I think if we have to summarize what I got like from the exercises themselves. From first off, on the like loose exercises. Sorry. So I think from that test I did with my camera with its zoom lens of different shot sizes and focal lengths, I got the same thing from the seeing glass exercise, in that I just have a better idea of the effective focal length on space now than I did before. And like more of an innate idea than I do an academic one. And it was nice that we put that into words today and we discussed the differences.
Can I add a little one? This is more of a game than an exercise. I encourage you from here on, every time you set up a camera, pick the focal length before you look at the image. Try to estimate the edges of frame before you look at the image.
I like that.
See how far off you are. That was one of my ways of teaching myself the field of view of any given lens on any given. As in, plonk a camera and go, okay, I think that's going to be out of frame. I think that's going to be in frame.
Also sounds like fun.
And if we had a little bit of time, I'd usually play that game with my ACs, or sometimes Gaffer or Grip would jump in as well. Yeah,
that's great. And I'll do more composition stuff, and I'll report back next time we record.
Do you have any kind of preliminary conclusions on the second round of the range?
Honestly, right now, I think I haven't got any specific conclusions, but I'm warming to the idea of developing a database. As much as I complain about film jargon, this is going to be a very jargony podcast. From what I've realized, we've got seeing glass, minute stakes, deranged, that kind of thing. I'm very, very happy we put I think the best part, and like what I can probably sum up in like a conclusion, is the fact that we've really done. I mentioned that I want to just do stuff and get innate knowledge from that, and we've just shown how we can combine those two things, because I've gotten a lot of innate knowledge versus academic knowledge, or like learned knowledge, absorbed knowledge, and I've kind of mixed them together today. Doing the seeing glass exercise, I can feel it growing my kind of absorbed knowledge. And then today, putting that all into words, it's wonderful. It's a great combination. We discussed normal lenses and how horribly wrong I was about the entire definition, and how that wrongness could have concatenated.
Was that YDK? Concatenate?
It was actually, yeah, I suppose it was. I didn't know that I didn't know, because I thought I knew. So there's one.
Please don't. So just know you were about to spell out the acronym there. That's just...
Okay, whatever. It's fine. I won't do it, I guess. Whatever. And we discussed like viewing size and how that affects the actual definition of what normal is.
What
how
is
to capture
the definition
space
of normal?
Well, something that matches or like replicates the human sense of perspective.
And what is the human sense of perspective in this context?
Well, size and distance, the relative size and distance of objects.
How relative size affects our perception of distance.
Yeah, that's a much better way of putting it than I did.
I've taught this lesson a few times. Yeah, I think my first attempt at defining it was a train wreck.
That was a great definition. I'm actually going to write that down right now.
Damn it. You're going to ask me to repeat it, aren't you?
I'm stealing it.
You're going to ask me to repeat it, aren't you? Just right now, right this minute. I'm not sure I can, to be honest.
Next episode.
Did kind of give you some tangible, actionable takeaways from this in terms of exploring the relationship between viewing size, viewing distance, and sense of perspective?
You've given me a few ways to test this, sort of the VR goggles situation, kind of figuring out internally. I think that what I'm going to make is going to be viewed on a small screen or a large screen.
What I'd like you to do is to explore the viewing size using something like VR goggles or try and
get my hands on those.
By the way, your DSLR camera, does your screen flip out, or is it fixed?
Yes, it does.
Back? Yeah, okay. So that's good. So just Google your camera model number with LCD viewfinder magnifier, and you get kind of clip-on, essentially like a loop.
Right. Okay, I see what you're getting at. Yep.
So I think the advantage to that is that you get to see that kind of bigger screen effect whilst composing for it in real time.
Yeah.
Whereas something like VR, that's probably more for like viewing other people's images.
after the fact as well. Yeah. Okay, I'll have to get that more. I'll look into that and might add that to my list of things to purchase.
Yep. And another thing that tiny little cheat that really kind of helped me develop my stance on this is a little trick I stole. Yes, I stole from Walter Murch. I think I've mentioned this a few times, but I'm more than happy to plug it again. His book, In the Blink of an Eye.
Ah, that one. Right. Yep. Yes. Yes, I've been made aware of this book.
So by the tone of that, I'm hearing aware of, but yet to read. And is that in the ballpark?
Yeah, I've been too busy reading. In my defense, I've been too busy reading screenwriting books instead.
Should we put some stakes, some beef on that? It's only like 150 pages.
It's a book. I'll buy it. We don't need stakes on a book. I'll buy it and read it. I read really slowly. I'm a slow reader. We can't do a deadline on a book. I will have read In the Blink of an Eye, Blink of an Eye by the 7th of April.
Okay.
Otherwise, I will not drink coffee for 3 days.
No,
larger scale ones. No, because I haven't done that yet. I haven't done that punishment yet. It hasn't been worn down.
No.
What? It's suffering. That's all it is. It's suffering.
If you haven't completed reading Walter Murch's In the Blink of an Eye by the 7th of April, you will have to post a meme online trashing Dune.
Oh, like how badly? Because I can self-aware trash it. Like I can kind of be like, this is a bit silly.
Like properly, as if you genuinely believed this is the worst pile of trash ever produced.
Okay, that's rough. Okay, so on like my
socials,
professional account,
Film Bro style. Do I dare say that? I don't actually know.
Yeah, like it wasn't.
But I'm just going by your description of it.
What I'll say is that it was like boring, and it was too pandering to the woke agenda or something. Like I'll be like really film bro-y.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course. The hashtag why I didn't do my work.
Of course. Yeah.
Leads back to the viewing size. You'd have a little screen, like maybe kind of 15-inch, 16-inch. And he, as many editors of his generations, did realize that the majority of his work was going to be seen on a bigger screen. So and that would affect the pacing of the editing. Because on the bigger screen, you have to track more, whereas if it's like a tiny little screen here, you can take in what's happening on the screen, different paces, right? So a trick he has for kind of reminding himself of thinking of it as a bigger screen was to cut out a row of heads and shoulders to scale.
Ah, you mentioned this. Yeah, you mentioned this.
As if he was sitting in a cinema with a row, 2 or 3 rows of people ahead of him, between himself and the screen. I've taken that a step further. For my storyboards, I've made myself a template. So whenever I draw storyboards, I do it in Photoshop with a template of a movie theater with audiences, heads and shoulders in front of the screen.
That's clever, I think.
Am I right in saying that in some ways we have taken the impact of viewing size and distance on perspective from being a very abstract academic concept and made it more tangible and actionable?
It makes a lot more tangible. Tangible is a good word. It makes a lot more tangible sense now, which is awfully nice.
So we have got some ways of trying to practically apply theoretical concepts with regards to viewing size and distance versus sense of perspective.
Excellent.
So that feels like way too much of a natural conclusion.
I mean, it really was, and it took like 15 minutes.
Damn it. No one knows that. I was going to edit that.
Yeah, no. We started our concluding words at 4:25.
What's time anyway?
What's time? What even is time? It doesn't exist. That's the cliffhanger. What is time, audience?